Hey guys, it's Maggie and I am back today, and today we're going to be talking about what to do when your doctor doesn't believe you. Unfortunately, this is something that I have experienced myself, so I'll share a little bit of that story as well as the ways to combat that. Before we get into the video though, I would love that if you liked these types of videos that you subscribed, liked the video, follow me on Instagram if you're over there. It would just mean a lot to me, so thank you so much. But yeah, let's get into the video. It is a really terrible feeling to go to a doctor when you are having symptoms that you know you need help with and they don't believe you and they don't offer you any help. In fact, it is devastating and can have long-lasting effects on you. I know, unfortunately, from personal experience because I had this happen to me as a child. If you are unfamiliar with my story, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease when I was 11 years old, and it is a disorder of the GI tract. Basically, my body does not recognize my intestines as their own and therefore just causes all sorts of problems up in there. And despite having already received my diagnosis from this particular doctor, something that comes along with Crohn's disease because it's a GI disorder is malnutrition and, a lot of trouble eating because you're experiencing pain. I mean, when your intestines are inflamed, that seems like a no-brainer to me. But unfortunately, this doctor did not see it that way. And as I mentioned in a video I did recently about, kind of not being ashamed to talk about your pelvic health, I had a lot of trouble explaining the symptoms that I was having. I was a young person who felt a lot of shame in what they were experiencing, so I felt like I didn't get out what I needed to get out to this doctor. But at the same time, as a child patient, particularly being a child, this doctor should have pushed more and helped me more, to be perfectly frank. The only way that I knew how to describe the issues that I was having was that I never felt hunger. I always felt nauseated. I said, I feel like I'm going to throw up all the time, every time I eat, and I can't eat. I cannot eat enough. And rather than this doctor looking into the real problem, and what the real problem was that I was becoming obstructed because of a narrow spot in my intestines, so basically every time I ate, the food could not pass through. I was severely constipated and was just trying to pile more food on top of it. This doctor told me that I just needed to eat more calories. I just needed to eat more calories. And as things continued to get worse, and I kept saying, I feel sick, I feel like my stomach's so bloated, and I feel like I'm gonna throw up, this doctor eventually told my dad and I that she thought I should see a psychiatrist because she thought that I had anorexia nervosa. And I knew what it was at that point. I knew what that illness was. And I remember just feeling so defeated. And out of all of the things that I have experienced with my Crohn's disease, the ostomy, the kidney surgery, everything else, that I think forever will hold the spot of the worst thing that happened and the thing that mentally just destroyed me. Obviously, my dad being with me every single day, seeing me every day, he knew that no, I wasn't suffering from an eating disorder. He knew that I was sick, but he was listening to the doctor in what we should do, and that was just to keep on eating. And so I kind of hit this really hard place of not knowing what to do, not knowing how to live with the symptoms I was experiencing. I would hide food that I told my dad that I ate, and it just led to not a very good time. I don't know. It was just really awful. And my dad has apologized to me so many times, because he would get frustrated that I wouldn't eat. And he did find sometimes the food that I was hiding, and he would be really upset about that. And he has since apologized so many times, and I keep trying to explain to him, this is not your fault. This was a doctor that failed to do their job. And, I'm 29 now, and it still bothers me. I still think about that doctor and it makes me angry because she didn't believe me. She thought I was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs and I was getting obstructed. Thankfully, not thankfully, I got so sick that I wound up in the ER, and I had a lovely surgeon that figured out what was going on and helped me with it. But it took a bit of time to get there, and so my childhood memories, my preteen memories, going to homecoming with a bloated stomach, I can see it in my pictures. All I can see is that. I can look at my stomach and just see the pain. I don't look at any of the fun times because there really weren't many fun times for me. My whole life was revolving around my symptoms. So, long story short, I have been there. I have been in the experience of a doctor not believing me and it ending badly for me. I know the impact that can have of a doctor saying, oh, well, maybe it's your stress or your anxiety or something else, or maybe you're just lying. What do we do in those situations? How do we tackle that? It really got me down, but as time has gone on, I've really learned how to gauge doctors and understand if they're going to help me or if I need to move on. So I'm going to talk about some of those things that I've learned, and hopefully this is helpful to somebody who might be experiencing this. And if you are, I am very, very sorry. Before I get into my first thing that I want to talk about, I do think it's important to mention that I did work as a bedside nurse. I have seen it from the other side. So I do kind of understand the frustration that medical providers can have with patients, because sometimes I've experienced it as a nurse. You're not respected and you are attacked. So I do understand that. So the very first thing that I highly recommend to you, if you are experiencing this, do not go in there guns a-blazing, frantic, screaming, crying. This is the number one way to make yourself very hard to understand and hard to listen to. And I wish that doctors, nurses, medical providers, I wish that they understood more why patients come in like this, because they're not the ones that have to live with the symptoms or whatever's going on. Sometimes what's going on is just taking over their lives and they can't help but be upset. And I've been there before. But I want you to take as deep a breath as you can and try and keep as calm as you can when talking to your provider, even if you feel like they're not giving you the care that you want. What you need to do is move on from them. I mentioned this in a recent video, I think it's so important to have a primary team that you feel comfortable with, that you trust. Right now, I have my primary doctor, my general doctor, and my GI doctor, and I really, really think it's important for myself, because my issue is mainly Crohn's disease, a GI disorder, that I have a GI team that I feel very comfortable with. And it took a very long time to get there. The hospital that I've been seen at, I feel extremely comfortable with. There was a moment where my old doctor retired and I was seen by somebody else that I didn't really trust. But thankfully, I have moved on to a doctor in that practice that I feel very comfortable with. I think that's so important, because these doctors can help when you need to be referred over to a specialist or a different specialist. They can kind of help you set the stage when you go to see that new specialist for whatever issue you may be having. Same with a primary care doctor. They are there to help you with that kind of thing. I remember when I was experiencing some weird symptoms with my pelvic floor after I had my rectum removed, my primary care doctor, I went to them I don't know how many times, and they were so kind and so willing to do all the tests. I love them. They were able to look up pelvic floor therapists to me and recommend different gynecologists and stuff that they trusted, and I really valued their opinion with that. I also understand seeing a doctor in a certain practice, and maybe that doctor is not the person that you trust the most, but maybe somebody else in that office. And this is, I'll give you an example, but this is not to say anything negative about the surgeon that I had for my proctocolectomy. He was fabulous. He was wonderful. But as you may know with some surgeons, they are short-spoken. Is that a term? He didn't have a lot to say. He was there to do his job and, get it done. Whereas his PA was the one that I really trusted, I really felt comfortable with. She was the one that I went to all the time with all of my issues. I saw her, I don't know how many times when I was trying to get my bottom to heal after the surgery, and also when I started having the pelvic floor issues. I was contacting her a lot because I just felt like we had that rapport, the comfort, and it was easier to talk to her, and I knew that she would also kind of bridge the conversation between myself and my actual surgeon. So that can also be really helpful if you've got a good doctor but you don't feel necessarily comfortable talking to them. If there's a nurse within the practice, a PA, a nurse practitioner, whatever, ask them to help you with that conversation. Because if you're able to openly share your symptoms with them and not be frantic, not feel like you're not going to be believed, they may help kind of represent you to that doctor or that surgeon or whoever. I also think it's important to do a little bit of research yourself on whatever you're experiencing, so when you go to the doctor, you're prepared. Rather than pulling information out of your butt, if you still have one, rather than doing that or finding all these crazy things on social media, because there is a lot, as I speak on a social media platform, there's a lot of information out there that is just completely incorrect. So if you go in there with a million ideas to your doctor, they may zone out. They may, what the heck is this person talking about? But if you really look into what you might be experiencing, it makes that conversation with the doctor a little bit more streamlined, a little cleaner and clearer, so that way they can understand how to best help you. If you already understand, maybe these are some of the tests you might want to run because these symptoms seem to match up with it, that's really helpful. But when you're pulling, random theories off of TikTok and throwing them at the doctor may be rolling their eyes. Should they be doing that? Heck no, but some do that. Something else that might be helpful to you is that if you go into the doctor and you feel as though they aren't helping you, they aren't ordering tests or whatever that you think might be required, ask them to note it in your chart. And this is not, I've seen other people talk about this and it comes off aggressive. And I don't think that's the way you should approach it. The way that I would approach this, if I said, hey GI doctor, I would really like an MRI because I'm experiencing some GI issues. Maybe my stoma feels like it's getting strictured or whatever. And I said, I think an MRI would help. And they said, I don't think so. You're still having output and you're fine. What I would do is I would say, okay, would you mind putting that in my chart so that way if I see any other doctors or any of my other providers, they know that I have not had an MRI and this is why. This may or may not prompt them to do anything, but at least you have a note in your chart about it. So if you do go to another provider or if you get a second opinion, it's in there and they can see that. And worst case scenario, and I know that this is difficult for some people to do because there are certain illnesses out there that only have a few specialists that can see you. Find a new doctor. If you really feel disrespected, if you feel like you are not being listened to, it is okay to get a second opinion. You do have to remember that that may be an additional cost to you. I would go onto your insurance website if you have an online version available to you where you can look up who's covered by your insurance. Something to keep in mind, but it is okay to get a second opinion. I had a really lovely doctor. Now, he was not my doctor, but a really lovely GI doctor that I went to because I had left my pediatric care with the doctor I had previously mentioned, and I wanted to be covered by a GI, just any GI that could help me get ostomy supplies and just kind of keep an eye on my blood work. I was not having any issues at that point, and so I went to this doctor, and he was so kind. I sent over my chart from my previous hospital, and he took a look at it, and I went into his office for the appointment, and he said, listen, I don't feel qualified to care for you because you've had ostomy surgery and it's just not my specialty. Crohn's disease is not my specialty. And because you've had a complicated journey with it, I don't feel comfortable caring for you. And he actually refused. He refused to take payment from us. My dad was like, no, we'll pay you. You gave your time to my daughter. We had the appointment with you. We'll pay you. And he said, no, I didn't provide you with anything. I didn't help you at all. Here, take your money back, is basically what this guy said. He was lovely. He didn't wind up being my doctor because he was honest with me. I wish doctors would be like that a little bit more maybe, but I so appreciated that because I've had other doctors who don't say anything, but like didn't provide care. So yeah, worst case scenario, find a new doctor. Again, I know that is difficult. One of the things that I have found helpful is local Facebook groups. I'm part of a Camp Oasis local group. If you're not familiar with Camp Oasis, it's a camp for kids with Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis. And, I've become friends with a number of them, and there's a Facebook group where I've asked before, hey, anybody know a good GI in the area? And they've been super helpful. They've helped me find my current practice, so there you go. But anyways, if you are experiencing a doctor that is not believing in you and not caring for you, you have to fight for yourself. You have to fight for the care that you deserve. And remember to always respect the providers. I do have experiences as a nurse where a patient felt like they weren't receiving care and they took it out on me. And, I continue to care for them to the best of my ability, but it makes it hard. So I want you to be aware of that as well. And go in there and be honest, be thorough with what you're experiencing, and try to educate yourself as best as possible. Have somebody assist you with, advocating for yourself, whether it be somebody else in the practice or a primary care physician that you're seeing and trust. And I wish you so much luck. I hope that this fades away and we have less doctors that don't believe their patients. It truly is it's a traumatizing thing to go through, and I will never forget my experience with my childhood doctor, and it will forever affect me. It has forever made my relationship with food just not great because I spent so much time trying to force feed myself when my intestines couldn't take it. So it made it very difficult, and I have to work hard to find the positivity in food and the enjoyment in food. And yeah, so I'm sending you a big old hug. I really wish this wasn't the case if you're experiencing it, but hopefully you can get through it. If you have any other tips for what to do when your doctor doesn't believe you, please comment them below. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next. Bye, guys.